One wrong turn on the interstate lands Colonel Jack Holt's 18-wheeler in Conrad Sullivan's dusty repair yard, a place where honor costs more than money. When threats collide with a veteran's pride, an invisible war ignites beneath the roaring highway. How far would you go to defend your name? The midday heat had long since faded into the cool hush of evening by the time the storm rolled over the interstate. Thunder cracked like distant artillery across the flat plains, rain slashing sideways against the aging metal roof of Sullivan's truck and diesel. Inside the garage, the familiar clink of tools echoed like a heartbeat. Conrad Sullivan, sleeves rolled, knelt beside a greasy axle, his focus razor-sharp. He wasn't just fixing trucks. This shop was his mission now, his post-war post. Mariela Ortiz, known on the CB as Wrench, wiped sweat and oil from her brow as she straightened up from the engine bay of an old truck. Her wiry frame belied her strength, and her precision made even Conrad look twice. Saving every paycheck for an out-of-pocket surgery her VA benefits refused to cover, she treated every bolt like it held her future together. Nick Brooks shuffled past with 2 mugs of black coffee, his gait stiff but purposeful. He hadn't spoken much his first few weeks on the team, just nodded and listened. But over time, the shop noise, the clatter of sockets, the hum of air tools had become therapy. He joked now, smiled sometimes, not always, but enough. The 3 made a quiet but formidable crew. Just past midnight, as lightning painted the sky in electric blue, the sound of a struggling engine broke the stillness. A battered Kenworth T680 rolled into the lot, steam hissing from beneath its hood. Behind the wheel, Colonel Jack Holt, decorated veteran turned logistics manager for Titan Freight, pushed open the cab door with military precision and disdain carved deep into his jawline. "You the boss," he barked, stepping into the yellow glow of the garage lights. "I am," Conrad replied, standing slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "You got trouble." "Transmission seized halfway to Amarillo," Holt snapped. "I've got 2 other rigs behind me on a tight window. I need this heap back on the road in an hour, tops. And I need it cheap." Conrad's expression didn't change. "You're looking at a full teardown, Colonel. That's a 5-hour job minimum. 8 if we do it right. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm offering opportunity." Holt's voice dropped to a gravelly murmur. "We move freight, millions in contracts. You fix this now, I send every Titan rig to your yard. You play ball tonight, and you're set for life." Conrad folded his arms. "I don't cut corners, and I don't do rushed patch jobs that could get a driver killed. You want safe, you wait." The colonel's face tightened. "Maybe I misjudged you, Sullivan. Thought you were one of the smart ones. You sure you want to pass this up?" Conrad didn't blink. "I'm sure." Without another word, Holt tossed the keys on the floor, turned, and whistled sharply. 2 other rigs pulled into view behind his. Their drivers looked on in silence as Holt retrieved his bags from the cab. Rain was coming down harder now, drenching the lot. "You just flushed your future," Holt muttered before stomping toward the dark. By morning, things changed fast. The usual rumble of passing trucks became rare. The phones stayed silent. Conrad assumed it was the storm. But when Mariela stopped by the truck stop for coffee and returned pale, holding her phone, the truth hit harder than the thunder. Trucker forums and message boards sprang up across the region. Posts accused Sullivan's truck and diesel of running scams, outfitting trucks with scrap metal parts, and overcharging stranded drivers. Doctored photos showed frayed brake lines and mislabeled boxes. Fake reviews poured in by the hour. "He's got a network," Nick said quietly. "He's not just angry. He's making sure no one comes near us again." Within days, regulars stopped showing up. Independent truckers avoided the exit entirely. Mariela's surgery fund sat untouched. Nick offered to pawn his guitar. Conrad said nothing, but each night he stayed longer in the shop, oil-stained hands resting on fenders like a soldier watching a battlefield fall. They tried to laugh it off, tried to fix the damage one call at a time, but the silence of the phone lines spoke louder. They weren't just losing business. They were being erased. It wasn't just sabotage. It was war, and Conrad Sullivan had never backed down from a war. But this one wouldn't be fought with bullets. It would be fought with truth. 2 weeks after Holt's visit, the silence in Sullivan's shop was no longer just unsettling. It was suffocating. The metallic clangs and bursts of laughter that once filled the space had faded into ghostly echoes bouncing off empty bays. Dust began to settle on the workbenches. In a place once defined by the rhythm of rebuilding engines, the stillness was deafening. Mariella stared at the calendar tacked to the breakroom wall. Her scheduled surgery date was circled in red 3 days away. But without the final payment, the clinic had called to say they'd have to cancel. She hadn't told Conrad yet. He had enough on his mind. Outside, Nick was cleaning carburetor parts that weren't even broken, more for distraction than purpose. Nights had become a second shift for him, working part-time as a security guard at a truck lot 40 minutes away. Just to help keep the lights on, he said, even though he often came back limping and too tired to eat. But money wasn't their only problem anymore. It started with the fleet of empty rigs that seemed to roll by without stopping. Then came the petty vandalism. Trash dumped at the front gate, foul-smelling grease smeared across the service door, and finally, more serious acts. One morning, Mariella opened the shop early to find their fuel storage tank contaminated with sugar. A few days later, a customer's air hose had been sliced clean through. It wasn't coincidence. "This is tactical," Conrad muttered, staring at the damaged hose in his hand. "Someone's trying to break us without getting their hands dirty." That's when Simon showed up. He was barely 23, with a fresh CDL and a second-hand Freightliner that coughed like a smoker. Nervous and skinny, he pulled into the yard one afternoon, asking for a second opinion on a brake job he'd gotten at Patriot Diesel. As Mariella crawled under the rig, she let out a soft whistle. "They charged you for new calipers. These are still factory originals. Greased, maybe, but definitely not replaced." Simon swallowed hard. "I knew something was off." Over lukewarm coffee, Simon spilled everything. He'd signed on with Titan Freight 3 months prior. The job paid decent, but there was a catch. All maintenance had to be done through Patriot Diesel, a shop run by Ray Collins, Holt's cousin. "They scare us into it," he said. "Say it voids our contracts if we don't comply. And the rates? Insane. 3 times what you'd pay anywhere else. But nobody dares speak up." Conrad leaned back, processing the words. "So Holt breaks my shop, funnels everyone to his cousin, and schemes the profits." "Yeah," Simon said quietly. "And he told the others that you run a chop shop. Said he was protecting us from you." That night, Mariella and Conrad began digging. They found public invoices from Patriot Diesel, Simon's included, and cross-referenced them with suppliers. It didn't take long to spot the pattern. Identical part numbers sold at triple the standard cost. In one case, a serpentine belt listed at $34 retail was invoiced at $126. They weren't just overcharging, they were laundering profit through fake markups. "We need more than numbers," Conrad said. "We need someone to see it, someone they can't ignore." But before they could plan further, trouble knocked on their front door. Literally. A dark SUV pulled up one morning, and a stern man in a blue windbreaker stepped out, flashing a badge from the National Trucking Safety Association. Name, Dwight Nilsson. Role, independent inspector. Tipster, anonymous. "I'm here for a surprise inspection," he said flatly. He walked through the bays with a clipboard, flashlight, and a cynical eye. Every tool chest was checked, every work order reviewed, every safety protocol scrutinized. At one point, he even swabbed a used filter for residue. Conrad tried to stay calm. "We've passed every inspection since we opened." Nilsson didn't look up. "You've also had an unusual number of complaints filed in the past 10 days. Complaints Conrad had never seen. After 3 grueling hours, Nilsson handed him a preliminary report, neutral but stiffly worded. "I'll be back," he said. "In the meantime, I suggest reviewing your compliance records." As the SUV disappeared down the road, Nick kicked a socket into the dirt. "They're tightening the noose." Conrad didn't respond. He just walked into his office, locked the door, and sat with the invoices and receipts spread out in front of him. It wasn't enough. But it was close. He looked over at the wall behind his desk, filled with photos of convoys, old war buddies, and the American flag folded from his father's funeral. His fists clenched. They weren't just trying to destroy his shop. They were betting he wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. The morning frost clung to the steel bay doors like stubborn doubt. Business had slowed to a near halt, but inside Conrad Sullivan's shop, something else had taken root. Purpose. "We're not just mechanics anymore," Conrad said, pacing near the tool bench. "We're investigators." Nick raised an eyebrow. "Since when did we become the Scooby-Doo gang?" "Since we realized no one else is going to do this," Mariella cut in, flipping open a tablet. "And I'm not letting that smug jackass cost me my surgery." They had evidence. Overbilled invoices, rigged inspections, and testimony from Simon. But it was all circumstantial. Holt was smart. He operated in shadows, used proxies, left no fingerprints. To take him down, they'd need to get creative and take risks. Operation Road Dog, as Nick jokingly dubbed it, began that afternoon. They started with what they knew. Simon's truck had recently been serviced at Patriot Diesel. Mariella, always 2 steps ahead when it came to engineering, embedded small, passive RFID tags into the new replacement parts they installed on Simon's rig: air filters, brake pads, even a camshaft sensor. Each tag was linked to a GPS-paired reader in Simon's cab, programmed to ping if the part left the vehicle or was swapped out. "Think of it as a digital fingerprint," she said, tightening the last bolt. "If those parts reappear in a different truck, we'll know." Meanwhile, Nick approached a few trusted haulers, mostly veterans from Conrad's Convoy days, asking if they'd volunteer to have discreet dash cams installed, not just to film the road, but to record conversations at fuel stops, service yards, and dispatch docks. Most agreed, no questions asked. For some, it was loyalty. For others, it was sheer hatred for Patriot Diesel's reputation. "I've had friends bankrupted over bogus service fees," one said. "If you're taking them down, I want in." That night, Simon returned to the shop, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. "They froze my logins," he said, setting his duffel bag down in the corner. "Guess someone noticed I was poking around." Conrad poured him coffee. "You still got the backup files?" Simon nodded. "I saved everything I could. Invoices, repair tickets, even payroll records for Patriot Diesel. You wouldn't believe how much they pay Holt's cousin compared to the actual techs." Mariella whistled low. "More like bribes than salaries." But the most explosive evidence came next. Simon slid a thumb drive across the table. "I found audio logs. Holt leaves voicemails on Ray's private line. Paranoid bastard records everything." That night, Conrad sat alone in the office, headphones pressed tight. One recording played over and over in his ears. "If one more hauler so much as waves at that Hero Boy garage, they're out. I don't care how long they've been with us. You route them to Patriot. You got that? We don't reward loyalty. We enforce it." It was the voice of a man drunk on power, fully aware of his leverage, utterly confident in his impunity. And still, things got worse. On a crisp Saturday morning, Conrad joined a veterans charity convoy headed west. He hadn't driven long haul in months, but the event was close to his heart. The convoy wound through rolling hills, tight passes, and long downgrades into open farmland. Halfway down a steep grade, Conrad felt the brake pedal shudder beneath his foot, then sink. He yanked the air brake lever, but it barely slowed the rig. He swerved hard to avoid a merging SUV and finally ground to a stop in the shoulder ditch, tires steaming and heart hammering. The trailer behind him jackknifed harmlessly onto the grass. Mariella was the first to arrive. She didn't say a word, just dropped to the gravel and crawled under the rig. She came out a minute later, holding 2 frayed brake lines. Cut clean. Razor, not wear and tear. Conrad stared at the horizon. "They tried to kill me." "Not just you," Nick said from behind them, phone in hand. "I just scanned the RFID log. One of Simon's parts? Pinged this morning. Inside Patriot Diesel's main bay." "You're sure?" "Positive. The part we installed on Simon's truck 3 days ago is now in a different truck registered to Patriot's fleet." That night, the team broke into overdrive. Simon's access logs gave them the location of a locked storeroom at Patriot Diesel. The next morning, Mariella disguised herself as a job applicant and managed to get a tour of the facility. She stalled the manager in the garage while Conrad and Nick slipped in through the rear lot. Inside the storeroom, they found racks of replacement parts. Most used, some broken, all tagged with the same part numbers Holt had publicly claimed Conrad used to scam customers. Each box had a faint black stamp, a serialized code that Mariella traced back to a discontinued supplier Holt had smeared in online forums as untrustworthy, the same supplier Conrad still used. She held up a transmission filter with a familiar serial. "He told the world we were thieves," she said, her voice low and shaking. "But he's been fencing our parts the whole time." That night, they laid everything out. The recordings, the invoices, the forged repairs, the RFID tracker data, the parts swap, the brake sabotage, the smear campaign, and the attempted murder by mechanical failure. They were ready. Conrad looked at his friends. Next stop, the Trucking Oversight Committee. Then the Military Logistics Board. And after that, Mariella grinned. "Let's make him famous." A thick morning fog draped the interstate like gauze as Conrad Sullivan stood outside his shop, coffee steaming in one hand, flash drive clenched in the other. His breath came slow but steady. This was the day. Behind him, Nick double-checked the hard copy binders, each labeled with precise tabs. Invoices, surveillance logs, RFID scans, medical risk report, brake failure. Simon, pale but resolute, paced in front of the bay. Mariella tucked a green bandana beneath her mechanic's cap and zipped up her coveralls like armor. Conrad finally spoke. "You all sure about this?" Nick gave a lopsided grin. "We've been in tighter spots." Mariella held up a wrench. "And with worse weapons." Simon nodded. "This isn't just about your shop anymore. Holt's been draining this industry for years." Conrad exhaled and turned to the lot. Engines rumbled to life, one by one. Across 5 exits of the highway, rigs lined the shoulder. Semis wrapped in flags, flatbeds painted with veteran logos, tankers bearing signs that read integrity over corruption and drive out fraud. Word had spread fast in the hauler community. Some came out of loyalty to Conrad, others for revenge, and some because they were just tired of being bullied by people like Holt. Over CB radio, one voice cracked through, "Convoy, roll on 3. See you at the Capitol." The lead rig, an old Peterbilt draped with a service banner, pulled onto the road. Behind it, a rolling fortress of chrome and resolve. By the time the convoy reached the State Trucking Association building, traffic had stopped for miles. Inside, the hearing chamber buzzed with tension. Suits from the logistics sector whispered. Association board members tapped their pens against notepads. And at the front table sat Jack Holt, smirking beneath his regulation buzz cut, still wearing his military lapel pin like a badge of righteousness. Conrad entered the room with quiet authority, flanked by Mariella, Nick, and Simon. Board chairwoman Nora Ellison, a no-nonsense woman with wire-rimmed glasses, called the session to order. "We are here today to review serious allegations against Colonel Jack Holt, logistics director at Crosspoint Freight Services, and assess whether his actions constitute breach of industry standards, ethical violations, and potential criminal fraud." Holt chuckled. "I'll keep this short. These are just a bunch of backwoods mechanics with an axe to grind. My record speaks for itself." Nora raised an eyebrow. "We'll see if it still holds up." Conrad took the stand. Calm, direct, precise. He presented the data with the confidence of a man who didn't need theatrics to tell the truth. Screenshots of tampered inventory logs, timestamped GPS data from RFID trackers, mirrored part numbers between trucks and Patriot Diesel shelves, the report from the brake line sabotage. But it was the audio recording that shifted the mood. Holt's voice filled the room. "If one more hauler so much as waves at that Hero Boy garage, they're out. I don't care how long they've been with us." When it ended, silence lingered like smoke. Holt stood. "You don't know what pressure's like in this business. We do what we must to survive. Contracts are competitive. Forcing truckers into overpriced repairs while your cousin pockets the difference." Ellison cut in. "That's not survival. That's embezzlement." Then came the auditors. Two forensic accountants from the association's fraud division had pored through Patriot Diesel's records. Their conclusion was damning. Holt funneled no less than $3.2 million in inflated contracts over the past 18 months, structured through dummy repair bills, false part markups, and coercive service routing. We recommend federal investigation and immediate termination. Holt's composure cracked. You can't do this to me. I've given my life to this industry. You gave your life to greed, Nick muttered from the back. Ellison stood. This board hereby revokes Mr. Holt's industry credentials, effective immediately. The case will be forwarded to federal authorities for prosecution. Outside, word spread fast. When Conrad exited the building, applause erupted. Not just polite clapping, but the raw, thunderous rhythm of truckers banging fists on hoods and boots on asphalt. The convoy honked in unison, a wild cacophony of air horns, like a freight anthem of justice. Dozens approached Conrad's group. Need reliable maintenance? We're done with Patriot. Got a fleet of 12 we'll sign today. You still hiring techs, miss? A young woman asked Mariella. She smiled wide. Soon as I'm back from surgery. That very afternoon, Conrad drove her to the regional medical center himself. No delay, no excuses, no Holt. A month passed. The shop now bore a new sign. Sullivan and Vets. Service with integrity, 24/7. It wasn't just a name. It was a creed. Nick found himself laughing more, especially during rebuilds when veterans from the convoy stopped by just to lend a hand or swap stories. Simon, now full-time and rebuilding his reputation, managed the digital inventory system like a pro. And Mariella? She returned from surgery with a bounce in her step and grease already on her hands within 2 days. Resting is boring, she said with a shrug. Conrad kept the brake line that nearly killed him, framed above his desk, beside the folded flag from his army unit. Not as a symbol of fear, but as a reminder. Some battles don't happen in war zones. Some battles take place in quiet garages, in small towns, under neon signs flickering against dusk. And when good people refuse to back down, even a convoy of lies can be run off the road by a single promise kept. Conrad fought his battle without a uniform, proving integrity changes lives. What would you do if someone tried to crush your reputation for profit? Tell us below, and if this journey moved you, please give it a like, subscribe, and keep riding with Embrace the Journey for more stories.